Lately, everything has felt like noise. Business advice, content strategies, uh, self-help, uh, even even people talking about finances, which is one of my guilty pleasure when people are talking about the cost of living going up and how expensive it is. Even that has started to feel like noise, and I wanted to make this video for my kids to talk about what you're consuming and how that can affect you, and what I've been trying to do to get more clarity and help with that feeling when things are getting too noisy. Um, Lately I've been feeling like there's a lot of mental clutter. Like I'll just scroll through YouTube and I'll see just everybody talking about like people doing street interviews and saying, oh, how much money, how did you make your $1 million? And some bougie person in an expensive area is saying how they made a million, made their millions off of, I don't know, being an OnlyFans agency or whatever. Or even like I said, like I've been enjoying this guy, Zach Rios, I believe is his name, and he's been talking about like these financial TikToks, and he'll say like, oh, people on TikTok are talking about how expensive the cost of living is, and I watched one of his most recent videos the other day, or I tried to, and he was highlighting these people on TikTok that are going into a grocery store, and they went into this like little convenience store. Essentially, it wasn't even really a grocery store; it was like a convenience store, and it was like $7 cream cheese or $7 milk and $10 cream cheese, and even that, for some reason, I felt like this is getting noisy. Like I've heard this thing multiple times now. And yeah, I mean, his channel is about highlighting just how crazy everything is getting, like the cost of cars and and but I think it was because of that person on the video that was going into that convenience store. I just thought, this person is an influencer on TikTok. I don't know how successful they are, but they want to highlight this thing, which is extreme cost of living, but it's also, I feel, deceptive. I went into the comments, and one of the first comments was just like, "Hey, why don't you go to Aldi's? Like, don't don't fade Aldi's. Aldi's is cheap." And when I was living in the U.S. before I moved to Colombia, um, like we would shop at Aldi's, like we would go to cheaper places, and even in Colombia, Colombia is getting more expensive. There's areas where it's more expensive. Like if you go to an expensive grocery store here, like a Jumbo or an Exito or Coruja, um, you will spend more money. So what my wife and I do is we go to the the where the locals go, where things are more affordable, where vegetables are cheaper, where the meat is cheaper, and sometimes that means going to multiple areas. And that's just an example. And I say that because, like, what I feel like when I listened to that and I saw that example, it was just, and no, I'm not blaming Zach or necessarily blaming this content creator, because again, it's all part of how things work. Is that you start listening to things to feed a specific bias. Maybe and that bias, confirmation bias, is you listen to things to confirm what you already believe. But the problem is when you start listening to those things, sometimes those things are manipulated to make you believe a certain ways. For example, going to a convenience store in an expensive area in New York, or even a cheap area, but going to a convenience store where you could be going to an affordable option, confirms the bias that everything is more expensive, where there are areas where you can get things cheaper. Um, Now I know that, you know, different people have different situations. Maybe they don't have the time, blah 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 blah. But there are ways to be able to get things more affordably. Um, and it's not just that. That's just one example where, um, for example, like I said, people that are doing street interviews, asking people how they made their millions, or podcasts that are interviewing people how they started, their software business, or how they launched their business and how they became successful. Um, how people optimize their time, how people how people become happier, even the self-help stuff. Um, you could even argue that this video is noise, um, but I'm sharing this not of hopes of gaining anything from it, like not that this is my business or that I'm dependent on these videos being successful. I'm just sharing this because I want to share this lesson for my kids, um, of of quieting the noise when it starts getting really when it starts cluttering and you start feeling overwhelmed. Um, one of the things that I tend to do is um, inputting information, and using that as a disguise for productivity. Um, I know this is a common issue because I've been doing this for years, and I had to learn how to turn it off. Um, but let's say whenever I get really into something, like right now, for example, I've changed this habit um, pretty well, but I also noticed, I also know that a lot of people fall into this trap where, let's say, I was interested in Airbnb. So that was one of my first successful businesses. And I was just listening to all these podcasts of how to grow a successful Airbnb business, and I was just consuming. When I was at work or if I was driving or whatever, I would just listen to this thing, and I needed that to learn and to grow, or I thought that I needed it, and I was listening to all these things, and I was just constantly doing that, and or when I first wanted to get into trading years ago. This was like 10 years ago now. I was just listening to people talking about traders and interviewing traders, and there's all these different inputs, and it can get dangerous because when you start getting all these different inputs, especially for like trading, for example. Trading is a really good example because for trading, everybody has a different strategy, everybody has a different method, and it's not that necessarily one method is better than the other. There's a bunch of different ways that you could do it, but if you start listening to all of that and you start thinking that you can apply all of that to your life, or like, oh, I'm listening to this thing, so this is good, that's where it becomes the problem because for example, a typical trader's journey is they'll listen to a bunch of things, they'll try a bunch of different things, they'll fail at a bunch of different things, and then they realize that it's just like, hey, if I just stick with this one thing, I can get really good at this thing, and then I can optimize for that, and then you start figuring out what are the things that you need to optimize for within that specific strategy. Same thing with Airbnb. Bunch of different strategies, bunch of different ways that people do things, but you can listen to all these different things, but it's not necessarily going to help you to listen to a bunch of these things. You might feel like you're productive, but it's not. Where it's better to just listen to, let's say, this one particular strategy. For example, like in trading, right now I'm learning from this guy Mark Minervini, who teaches a specific strategy, and it's built off of all these other people that he's built his strategy on top of. And rather than listening to like different day traders, or listening to prop traders, or listening to different types of swing traders, or candlestick traders, or people, all these different strategies, ICT, I'm just listening to this one guy, and I'm also not listening to it all the time because it, right now it's like when I'm working, but when I'm not, I'm not. And when I'm not working, I really just want to relax. But when I'm on, like, focused, that's when I want to be focused. Um, so, but a lot of people get into the trap, myself included, where um, you know, you mistake that you're doing something good for by consuming. Um, so, here, and so those are a couple different examples. One is when everything just is feels like it's bogging you down, and then the other, like that last example, is things are when you feel like you're being productive by listening to this thing, and it's just more information when you don't necessarily need more information. You just need to take action. um, and then the other one is more, yeah, I mean, all of it is noise. um, so what I'm doing right now is, I am, um, trying to I'm cutting my screen time. um, I'm cutting my screen time. um, I'm choosing different inputs. So, rather than before, where I just go on YouTube and I try to find something to kind of occupy my time if I'm washing dishes or something like that, rather than doing that, um, maybe I'm listening to a book, or I'm just washing dishes without listening to anything, uh, or um, maybe I'll just listen to something that I enjoy. My daily pattern, typically how I'll do it, is during the day, I'm just that's like work, me studying, me working on on my trading. And then at night, um, when I'm washing the dishes, getting ready for bed, I might listen to something more for like entertainment. So like I've been enjoying like the Caleb Hamer videos, but Caleb Hamer, he talks about like people with awful finances, so I enjoy that. That's kind of like my guilty pleasure right now. Um, I also listen to uh, fiction books. Like I've read, um, basically all of Murakami's books. Um, I Yeah, I'm just trying to cut the noise because it at a certain point, um, and this kind of goes into uh, one of the other things that, one of my frameworks for how I kind of look at life is this concept called the life tree. So the life tree, you can think of it. You have a tree, which is your life, but then you have a river, and that river is everything that flows into your life. That's people, media, and that's and what you want to do is to control the quality of that river. You can control what goes into that river to feed your tree, your life tree. So you have all this different input. Um, if you are trying to get a specific result from your tree, let's say trying to improve your trading, then the input that you need to be is selective with what you're putting into your river. If you just start inputting everything, then the river gets muddy, the tree doesn't grow healthy, and you're not able to get the output that you need. Um, you can also remove things from that river, so removing specific items, removing these different rocks, that um, can affect your tree. Uh, so you have your river. Next, you have your roots, um, and next you have your roots, which are your values. How you consume things. You can look at it kind of like the filter of your life, the soil and the roots. Um, how are you filtering this information? Because if I listen to something now, I have a different set of filters in my life. So what I I'm choosing what based on what I listen to. Here's a good example. Right now, because I've been learning how to trade. A lot of the things that I listen to, books, people, um, everything is being filtered through the lens of as a trader. I can listen to a book like I was listening to this book recently called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and the whole book I was just thinking like, man, this really applies to where I'm at in my life with trading and all of, what I'm trying to do and how I'm trying to let go of things and um, remove myself from the flock that thinks a specific way and trying to elevate my thinking to where I'm not just stuck at a certain place, um, and letting go, eventually also letting go of that control, and listened to a book that is not about trading. It's about a seagull that's learning to fly, but it applied to me because I had these specific filters, these the soil, this filter from that river, the input. Um, and then you have the trunk, which is your behaviors, your attitude, um, uh, behaviors, attitude, actions, and that influences your trunk. Your behavior, your attitude, your actions is what you do on a day-to-day basis. How are you going to take the input from that river that is then filtered through the soil, and then what are you going to do about it? Because if I listen to a book like Jonathan Livingston Seagull, and then I don't do anything, well, it doesn't help me at all. So, how do you take the information that you are inputting and then use that to benefit your life? For example, with that book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I I realized that part of that I am in the process of leaving this mentality, leaving this flock mentality of, let's say, just buy and hold investing or dollar cost averaging that everybody is told to believe. And now I am learning to, I'm training um, to go into a different mindset with how I live my life, which again that changes the inputs and the filter and then the behaviors, and then this directly affects the next, which is your branches, the different areas of your life. This one specific branch is the mindset. One of my goals is to grow my wealth through active trading, and so that's that life tree framework is how I um, look at things in life now, and listening to my body of when it's like, hey, like the inputs that you're putting in are not healthy, or that it's overwhelming, or you need to slow down, or you just need to stop. Sometimes I'll just stop listening to books. uh, I'll get halfway through a book and I'll just be like, I don't need to finish this, um, or I'll be watching a video and it's just, I really don't need to watch these videos anymore. Um, I don't. Um, some ways that I have also helped to cut some of these habits. I use this tool called um, Regain on my phone. Might be available. I use a Android phone. It might be available on iPhones. But another app that you can also use is Stay Free. They work kind of similar. Regain, I like Regain because it stops notifications from happening on your phone. I really don't like notifications on my phone. So it schedules your notifications, like it puts it in a notification folder, and then it'll deliver that batch of notifications to you at a specific time. And the other nice thing about Regain is that, and Stay Free is that when you go onto an app, it'll say like, "Hey, do you really want to use this app?" So before I was spending like a lot of time on Facebook and Instagram, uh, and so I started using these apps, and then it kept me from like I had to pause and I'd be like, "Do I really want to use this app?" And then Stay Free, which is nice, it'll show you how much time you're spending on different apps. Um, so you can know like, am I spending more time, on Reddit or wherever. So that helped me to cut down on using these things. I don't use TikTok. I've never really been interested in TikTok. I guess it's similar to like, Instagram with the shorts and stuff like that. Um, um, but I found that helpful. Um, so, the more that I disconnect from the noise, the more I feel like I can hear myself. Um, and what I mean by that is like I've gone through periods where I've listened to a lot of things. Like I've listened to, I listened to a lot of Alex Ramosi. I listened to a lot of like My First Million. I listened to, um I used to listen to this podcast called Mixergy and Chatting with Traders and Rob Booker and all of the Bigger Pockets and all these different influences. And that filtered my perception of reality to be what how people think in that specific space. And it was helpful for creating a Julian that is like a startup founder or like a trader or um, like a real estate investor or an online business owner. But it was also not. I'm not just a one-sided person. Um, so that's why incorporating, other things like I have a book club that I've been a part of for a few years and listening to books. It's like classic literature, Screw Tape Letters, Dante's Inferno, um, Huckleberry Finn, like typically like classic American literature. Um, um, that has helped to give me another perspective that is not where I'm just single, like Julian, the digital marketer, uh, Julian, the AI guy. Um, so adding in different layers has also helped. Um, I feel to make me more well-rounded and to also recognize that my identity is not tied to one specific group, which is why that also influences my friend groups. Like I have friends who are the hustle bros, online marketers. I have friends who are into real estate. I have friends who are into philosophy and literature. Um, I have friends who are into trading. Um, I have my friends who have just been a part of my life for many years that don't have that any of those things related, and that helps me to not just isolate myself into one identity and one thing, which can ultimately impact how your life tree forms. Um, and now cutting noise, cutting all these different things, is helping me to also reflect on, well, what do I truly want right now? Because the noise can be a mask uh, for your life. Um, because when you're constantly inputting, you're not able to sit um, with those thoughts, with your own thoughts. You're not able to create your own identity because um, if you're not, there's this book that we read in my book club, called Infinite Jest, and one of the quotes is be careful with choosing your temple of fanaticism. Um, and one of the concepts of the book is that if you don't choose if you don't choose if you don't make a choice, somebody else is going to make that choice for you. Society, other people. Um, and it's the same with when you're inputting information. You can choose your temple of fanaticism. It could be healthy or it could be unhealthy. It could be drugs, or it could be working on a business. It could be uh, existential questions, uh, or or you could choose to just stop and not listen. And sometimes you just need to stop. So if everything feels like noise right now, um, you're not broken. Maybe you're just overstimulated. And it's okay if you unplug. Um, so that way you can remember why did you even get started into all of this in the first place? Why did you start listening to these things? Why did you start choosing a specific temple of fanaticism? Because it's easy to forget that if you don't stop.